Hey everybody, how are you? I appreciate you being here today. There's going to be a few more people trickling in, but I know I was just told that I had 30 minutes for this talk, and I thought I had 45, so I'll use 45. Unless it goes sideways, and then someone can, hook me and we'll pull the plug or whatever the metaphor is. But just want to say thank you. Genuinely, thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all of my colleagues for your children. We're really lucky. We're really privileged to work in this school at this time, and we're quite proud of it. The state of the school, in a word, I think, is excellent. And if I were to throw up a dashboard on a screen right now, which is probably the exact opposite of what I'm about to do, I could wax on about the metrics that show kind of excellence at this school. We had the best admission season we've ever had, more applicants than we've ever had. I think Meg Grover and team, she did it from the birth wing in Sharon Hospital. And they enrolled 104 kids on April 10th. We'll still enroll a few more as we move through the spring, just because in boarding school sometimes families move and situations change and we want to protect for some attrition, but an amazing group of kids coming in for next year. We had 150 families, or 150 students and families at Revisit Day, so that looks great. That's one measurement of a really healthy school, is that people want to go there. And then our annual fund, we sort of raised the bar this year. We jumped up $250,000 in annual fund asks. So our goal is $2.65 million, and we're actually $90,000 away from reaching that goal. So we've cruised at a pace that we've never really seen before, thanks to the leadership. Where is she? Natalie Smith, our Director of Advancement, and her team in Anthony House. And so if any of you want to help us close that gap before the end of the year, and you still haven't made that gift, I'd love to talk with you. And there are a lot of compelling reasons of why schools continue to keep an annual fund. Some schools will say, well, why not just charge what it costs? But there are many, many compelling reasons. I'd love to talk with you about that. And school is an excellent form. Kids are moving as quickly as can be in and out of SATs, PSATs, ACTs, getting ready for the AP exams, writing papers that are spectacular, which I'd love to talk with you about. I chose not to write down something formal today. So I wanted to try something a little different with you. I wanted to let you in my writing process as a head of school. I love to write. I was an English major, like true English major, Shakespeare, Chaucer, Milton. We didn't even read American literature because the department was so snobby about it. And I was a creative writing focus, and so I love to write these talks. And instead of doing it this time, I just said, maybe I'll flip it, bring back of the house into front of the house, and let you know what's going on in my mind. And so I picked today as an example of this year's core value of focus, curiosity. 13 symbols to potentially make you curious. So why, and I'll walk through quickly, why does he have a red-eared slider turtle up here? A Cornell hockey hat, a lit candle, 2 snuggling teddy bears, marshmallows, a Millbrook jersey, 3 Stanleys of different colors, a running shoe and a green sheet, 3 books, The Emotional Lives of Teenagers, Never Enough, and The Overachievers, Secret Life of Driven Kids, 4 books, The Last Child in the Woods, Irresistible, Gene Twenge's iGen, and a new book, hot off the press, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, with an ashtray and a cell phone, solar eclipse glasses, last year's Blaine essay finalists, a beautiful, actually, I think Aaron ordered this for me, and it was on back order. It took a year and a half to get to the house. These, non-stick, is it Le Creuset? Le Creuset, I don't know what it is. So 13 symbols that represent things that are in my head, that represent the state of the school, things that we've experienced together as students, faculty, and staff that I think you should know about, and things that I think you should be having conversations with your children about. There's some fun topics and playful topics. There's some really heavy topics, and I think these symbols will make sense as we go. And some denote something, that is, they are literally the thing I want to talk about, and some connote some things, that is, they have connotations connected to them. So what I'm going to ask of you, it's in any particular order. Actually, there's no particular order. It's whatever order you choose. All you have to do is raise your hand, maybe say your name, and then the form your child's in, and then pick the symbol. I'll talk about it. That's how we're going to do State of the School.
This is what order. My daughter's 8, our daughter's Aiden, 6th form, and Ashford.
All right. So, there's the literary canon, which some believe in, some don't. Some think it's too Western. Some think that it needs to be expanded. Some challenge the idea of a canon. I'm going to say that there's a canon of literature that I've experienced throughout my 23 years in independent education that says all of the warning signs that we need to pay attention to. And the very first book that I experienced as an educator, which really inspired me to teach a course on eco-literature, it was called Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. And Last Child in the Woods, I'll say in 2003, talks about internet addiction, children not connecting anymore, and that it pushes people to suggest that screens are going to be a problem of the future. And it urges folks to engage with nature, with other living beings, and to maybe try some things that are unplugged. That book stayed with me till about 2012 when Adam Alter wrote Irresistible. And he started to talk about, this is an author talking about addictive behaviors in technology. And he opens the book up with the idea of drug dealers learn this lesson first. Don't get high on your own supply. That Steve Jobs and the folks in Silicon Valley won't give their children iPads before a certain age. There's a member of this audience now who happens to run a school in Silicon Valley, and I saw a presentation by that person, and one of the primary focuses of that school is social emotional learning. It's not technology. And so this book explains all of the synapses and dopamine that happens when you follow streaks, when you hear clicks, when you have friends, all of the things that are happening to you and to your children when you engage in technology. The next book in the canon is Jean Twenge's iGen. So this book addresses and draws a correlation between students who were born when the iPhone existed and students who were not. So that she draws a correlation that those who were born in this generation, there is increasing loneliness, anxiety, depression, and even suicide. Really powerful book, talked about all over independent schools. I'm sure you know it. Sort of hot off the press is Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation, and the subtitle is How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And this is really the first time an author, a psychologist, social scientist, makes an argument that there's a causation, that it's not just a correlation, that phones are causing this great rewiring, and that we can undo it. So I had the privilege of being invited down to a talk with Jonathan Haidt in New York City on Tuesday night. It was amazing. I was in a room with about 100 people, and I was only one of 3 or 4. They wanted real influencers in this. I was one of 3 or 4 educators. And to kind of sum up the book, I've read 179 pages of it. He doesn't use these words, I do. I think that we're going to look back at this time eventually and say, wow, I can't believe we allowed our children, we allowed ourselves to do that. That when I was in 9th grade in public school, before I came to Millbrook, we were allowed to walk outside and smoke cigarettes. I don't know if any of you had that experience, that if anyone went to public, you could do that at Corcoran High School in Syracuse, New York in 1993. And so I put the cell phone on the ashtray because I think we're going to look back, and it's nobody's fault. I'm not standing up here with moral righteousness. And we're going to look back at our behaviors as parents, what we're modeling as parents, because I know we're not perfect, and I'm continuing to say we. I'm not pointing the finger at you. I know we're not perfect. But we're going to look back at mistakes that we've made, and I think schools are going to look back at, wow, I can't believe that we allowed that. So someone asked me today, do you think that you're going to move kind of into cell phone free zones? I mean, I'd love to be a cell phone free school, but I think it's going to take some steps to get there. So Jonathan Haidt says the real focus in this country should be in middle school, right at that pre-puberty age, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. And it's a little harder to undo in high school, but I think over time we can get there. So I'll stop there. Next symbol.
Daily King, my daughter's Harper, she's 5th form, and I'll go with marshmallows.
Daily King. All right, so connected to this. Any of you know about the 1970 marshmallow test at Stanford University? I see hands. So it's not many, yeah. So this is, among educators, it's really popular. So in 1970, a few Stanford professors invited in, 50 to 75 children, 3, 4, 5 years old. And they put a marshmallow in front of the child, or a pretzel, I think that was also part of the test. If that child could sit for 5 minutes, they would add another marshmallow. And then if that child could sit with those 2 marshmallows, they would add another marshmallow. But they could eat the marshmallows whenever they wanted. And so it's an experiment in what I would say when people ask me, what's top of mind for you? What do you wish you could just instill in every child? Delayed gratification. Is Aurora here? She would know it. Ro, do I ever use that at home? As she rolls her eyes. Delayed gratification. So this experiment then follows those children through life. And the children who were able to sit and not take the first or even second marshmallow had better physical health, so a body mass index. They had longer lasting marriages. They had more happiness, I'm not sure how they measured it, in their careers. And they were generally more balanced and satisfied. So the marshmallow idea is very much connected to the anxious generation and what we're dealing with, if we call this the great rewiring of this generation, is that we're fighting regularly against instant gratification. And at times that we can, as educators and parents, in appropriate ways, teach and instill the idea of delayed gratification, it's going to be beneficial to our children. Next symbol.
Meg Chamberlain, and my daughter's Eleanor, 5th form, and I will pick the Eclipse glasses.
So this is just a fun one. People have asked me, what did you do here? Only 11 days ago. This was all the rage. Can't see anything with it. So it was all the rage 11 days ago. We had an all-school event. I don't know if your children talk to you, so this is why I wanted to tell you about this. But we had an all-school event on the back of Case Hill where all the students came out, all the faculty came out, faculty children. We had 500 of these glasses, and we were able to experience the eclipse together. It was really fun. It was a little cloudy, so we kind of had these, dispersed, intermittent moments where we actually got to see it in its full effect. But it was a really, really great day, and it was interesting. So the kids were like, "Nah, I'll catch the next one in 20 years," and then sort of halfway through, once we weren't in the path of totality, but once it was sort of at its full state here. Everyone just like, yeah, let's go to practice. Like, that's good. They didn't even want to watch the end of it. There was no more. It was over. I also bring it up because it was a really eerie week of natural phenomena here at Millbrook School. We had maybe the most wicked windstorm in the Hudson Valley in the last decade. Trees all over campus. If you get a chance, just Jeff Smith, our COO, and if you get a chance to see Ben Day or anyone on our maintenance staff, it's amazing what they've done here on campus just to clear the trees. We had a car smashed. We had a house that was just missed. We had trees down all over the, roughly 800 acres that we have. It was a wild night. I was worried one dorm in particular was going to blow away. You can guess which dorm that was. I really was. And then on Friday, we have an earthquake. I mean, I got all the kids out. Get out of the building. I thought the boiler was like rocking the building. Lo and behold, within seconds, I couldn't even call anyone. We move out of the building. Oh, Mr. Downs, it's an earthquake. I just see it's in New Jersey. Like, I think we're set. We just felt a little bit of it. I mean, it was unbelievable. Okay, let's get back to class. So, wild, state of the school. That was a really wild 5 days. Next symbol. The jersey? Thank you, Michelle. All right, so again, wondering if your kids talk to you about what happens at Millbrook School. So this jersey in particular was given to me by the girls hockey team when they did a sort of paint the rink for cancer awareness. And it was pretty great. I love this. They gave me Downs. That's my graduating year, 1998. So I love that. But I thought I'd use that to parlay into our alumni summit. Did your kids talk to you about it at all? I see some heads saying no, which really disappoints me. I'm really proud of this program, and I do think every school should do this. It's one day. And it's a great way to engage the alumni body. So what we do is we ask 22, 23 alumni from varying years, this happened to be a pretty young group, to come back to school, teach 3 classes, 45 minutes each, on essentially, what was your life before Millbrook School? What did you experience at Millbrook School? And what do you do now? And how does it all connect? And so it becomes a kind of career day, but it's not just a career day with a bunch of strangers. It's a bunch of people who also lived in Clark and Abbott and Case and also had some of the same teachers and spent significant time here. So we have this shared experience with the alumni body that can come back and offer us something. And I'll say from the alumni perspective, they were really, really grateful to be able to come back and give something other than just a check to the annual fund. Or come back and just sit at a cocktail party. They actually had something of substance to share. From the student perspective, what I've heard is that they had a blast learning about different careers and what happens after Millbrook School. And then from a faculty perspective, it's really fun. If you're here for a decade or more and you know a lot of these students, it is remarkable to see the twists and turns in their lives. I mean, just a kind of like quick highlight, John Conahan got a full scholarship to go play baseball at Penn State, got hurt, and now he's a Sports Illustrated writer. Jed Diamond was here in graduated in 1987 and actually married Josephine Ayacuzo, who's head of the Winston School in Short Hills, New Jersey, and she was my French teacher when I was here. Jed, as the Deputy Director, Office of South Asia, U.S. Department of Commerce. Jim Egan's in the house. Where is he? Did I miss him? There he is. Jim Egan's in the house, class of 88, head of Synap School out in Silicon Valley. Now I just outed that person who's in the room. Olivia Ghali, photographer and content creator, actually working with a variety of brands that you all know. And Chloe Bai, she was remarkable. She's a creative executive at Netflix. And she said to the kids, she opened up her presentation, my job didn't exist when I went to Millbrook School. And, it's really important that you learn how to learn because there are going to be things that we don't even know about that are going to be so cool. And then she went on to talk about how at 20 years old at NYU, she filmed all of Banksy's art exhibits around New York City and then sold it to HBO and held out for a year because HBO wouldn't pay her enough. Incredible stuff. So this is, I can leave this, we could talk about at greater length. This was an incredible program that if your children haven't asked or talked to you about it, ask them. And just say, who did you see? And have them tell you about it. Next symbol.
Our Marsh, Windsor,
Oh, nice, thanks. Okay, so True Confessions by Jon Downs. I have lived with a red-eared slider turtle 33 of my 45 years of existence. And it's not that cool and sexy to be the reptile guy, I will tell you that. So this guy, so when I was 5 years old, I was fascinated with these animals, and my parents bought me one, and I had it until I was 26. If you look up birth or life expectancy of these creatures, it usually says 20 years or longer, which there's like no specific time. So I had a limited vocab at 5 years old. I named it Spot. And then when my son turned 5, he said he wanted a turtle. And then he named it Spot. So that's Spot Jr. And so we've had Spot for 7 years. I wanted to use Spot as a way of just actually talking about the Trevor Zoo and how we think about things. And I think most of you know the story of the Trevor Zoo. 23-year-old, wild, conservationist biology teacher shows up to interview for a job, has a station wagon full of animals, many of which were exotic. Edward Pullen says, oh, the boys would think that's cool, and actually they could give them real responsibility with real and meaningful consequences attached. And lo and behold, 75 years later, AZA accredited Trevor Zoo. That's the short version. We now have roughly 75 students at a clip working in the zoo when school is in session, and we have 40,000 visitors a year. It's the greatest, I don't know in independent schools a better public-private partnership than the Trevor Zoo at Millbrook School. And we actually have really exciting things in front of us. We are finishing up a process of building out a 30-year master plan. So what will this zoo look like in 30 years? How will it continue to be integrated into the school? As well as sort of how do we engage with the public on a greater scale? We didn't charge people to come visit the zoo until about 10 years ago, and I think we charged them $3 or $5. I mean, we haven't really thought about it. That six. Thank you. The CFO knows we increased. So one of the first things I did as a head of school was create a committee on our board of trustees to start actually overseeing the zoo and governing the zoo like a group of trustees should and could. And so it's a really exciting moment, I think, for us as an institution to see what we can do. A lot of independent schools are looking for things like this, not just to have public-private partnerships, but also to create other revenue streams. So what can we do with this jewel of a program and facility that we currently have? One of the best lessons I can vividly remember as a student, and we're going way back now, 1995. I'm standing with 15 other students holding a ball python, and Alan Tusignon, who's my advisor, who's still the director of the zoo, talks about the anatomy and biology of a human being and the anatomy and biology of this snake, which was, for me, very uncomfortable to sit there and hold a snake. And so he goes through cold-blooded and warm-blooded and the muscular structure and the skeletal structures, and essentially says this is why snakes in archetypical imagery symbolize evil, because they're so different from us. So we fear things that we perceive to be different from us. I mean, powerful. And so people, how do you use the Zoom? Like, my biggest lesson I remember, and I did a lot of things here, was English class. So, all right, next symbol. Please. What's that?
Oh, I'm Lisa Tyler, my daughter,
Lisa.
Canada.
Okay, thank you. So among the heavier topics here, as the Rev walks out, that's actually amazing, although she, yeah. We've gone through some profound loss this year. And it's important that we could have a chance to talk about this because I've had a chance to talk with all of your children as we move through, and our alumni body. In just January, we had a teacher who was a bit of a polarizing figure, but one of the best teachers I've ever had in my entire life, who left Millbrook School in 2003 to work with Jane Goodall. He passed away of glioblastoma. And so our alums really had a heavy heart this winter. our trustee and neighbor, Steve Clement, who was the head of Browning School for 29 years, if you know Browning in the city, he lost his son this January at 40 years old. And as you know, I don't need to tell you here on Parents' Day, there's nothing that scares a parent more than that, because that's just not the natural order of things. And then over break, we experienced the loss of Michael Johnson as a community. And in some ways, because it was break, we could manage it, but it was a profound sense of loss and mourning on this campus when we returned. And we held the most beautiful memorial service in here together, which we didn't require of the student body or faculty and staff, and everybody showed up. It was at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. It was sort of put together and run by Reverend Hardy, wherever she slipped off to, right here. And when you live where you work and you work where you live, life happens. Sometimes I get a little angry when people say, this is a bubble, what do you do for outside of the bubble? No, it is not a bubble when you have to experience that as a community. And I asked our third formers at the reading that week, how many have actually experienced loss, a funeral, a celebration of life, a memorial service? About 2/3 had. But you know, if I use transitive property and use it as a litmus test, about 1/3 of our student body hadn't really ever gone through anything like that. And so they never really thought about grief and loss and solace as you search back towards finding some comfort. And it was a pretty powerful thing. Our board member, and you've heard her talk last in the fall, Samantha Boardman, said to me, John, it's a moment like this, it's actually not the right move for a school to say, go get a bunch of grief counselors and social workers and have them ready for the kids. That's not the right move. The right move is to get together as a community, to celebrate the life and to respect the space that individuals have within the community in terms of how they mourn. And so I wanted to actually, with this, I wanted to read you two things that I've been thinking a lot about as the community has experienced loss. This is how Reverend Hardy opened up the celebration of Michael Johnson's life. She said, and this is from Reverend Angus MacLean, he's a 19th and 20th century theologian and teacher. He says, leaves should not fall in early spring, winter should not follow on the heels of spring. Yet, when they do, we can and must speak for life. For there is no answer to death but to live vigorously and beautifully. We give respect and dignity to the one we mourn only when we respect and dignify life and move towards its richest fulfillment. I had not heard that before. The Rev introduced me to that passage and the community to that passage, and it's been enormously helpful as I think about how to talk with kids about loss. And I urge you to have a conversation, if you haven't already, with your children. They felt loss. Michael was an assistant IT director, but he spent a lot of time playing music in front of our entire student body and really gave a lot to the community. And we received a lot from him. The other quotation that I regularly visit, so many of you may remember we had Jason Reynolds, unbelievable kind of young teen author, also writes some other sort of more profound stuff, but his book that I love the most is called Boy in a Black Suit, where he doesn't get a job at this fast food restaurant that he wants because there's a cute girl working at the restaurant. He gets a job at a funeral home, and he starts to almost get addicted to eulogies because he finds them so uplifting. And he says, death isn't bad, it isn't. It's just that life is so good, it's so damn good that you just want to hold on to it and everybody in it. And so I've been thinking a lot about that as well as we go through this as a community. So that's why I have the candle. Next symbol.
Emily Commissioner, I am fourth quarter. Given the photo of the Iron Chef last week, I'm dying to know about the skillet.
Oh, that was a giveaway, huh? The skillet? All right, so thank you. I can't take any credit for this. This is Eric Kennedy, the director of weekend activities, and Chef Sam, who runs our really runs the dining hall and the team of people that put food together. That was one of the most fun experiences I've had in schools ever. It was totally chaotic, wild in all the sensory ways, the smells, the visual, the noises. I lived in fear as head of school. There were kids with sharp butcher knives chopping onions like, this, and you're like, oh dear God. And then flames, and we had to open the doors because it got a little smoky in there, and then we had kids running around, so we had about 45 students that were actually in the teams competing, and then the student body and some faculty and staff on the outside observing as they were moving along. They got kind of 2 proteins that they had to use, and then they had basically every ingredient under the sun in the kitchen they could run in. They had 1 hour to put together an entree, maybe an appetizer, and a dessert. And they were remarkable. They worked together, they cleaned up, they had beautiful presentations, they sold, your kids can sell. They know how to sell. So they arrived at the judges' table, and then they present their dishes, and then we pick the winners. And just as a way of kind of highlighting some of the best stuff, Danny Bergen made a homemade pita bread from scratch with mozzarella and cherry tomatoes stuffed inside that I'm telling you, you would pay for and go back to that restaurant. It was outrageous. And then I don't know if Mary Elizabeth or Jason are here, the Page family, but I called out Marshall Page in assembly, and I said, he made the absolute worst dish I've ever had in my entire life. It was, and you wouldn't think it could be that bad, but it was supposed to be strawberry shortcake. It was the doughiest mess, undercooked, definitely cross-contaminated, like a piece of chicken was in it. And he stood with the biggest grin going, Mr. Downs, take a big bite. So it was kind of the best of boarding school activities, because here we are on a Saturday night on a closed weekend, dorms kind of competing against one another. They're collaborating, they're working, they're lousy, and it's noisy, it's messy, and then they produce things that, whether they're proud of them or not, they love the process of it. And in my mind, we have a beautiful school, aesthetically unbelievable. That dining hall, Castertano Hall, is top of the land, and it was fun to see it just mess, just like a beautiful kitchen, just destroyed. And then within minutes, at the end, all the kids helping clean up, it looked just the same. So it was a great night. Please.
Jonathan Biller, my daughter Olivia says they're former of the Stanley mugs.
All right, do you all know this? Do you know these mugs? Does anyone, hands? Roro say, are you going to show them my Stanleys? Yes, I am. So when I look up to the sixth form balcony or out in the student body now, I see these things everywhere, and I'm saying, what is going on? And, I read up a little bit on it. And I've known Stanley, the company. It's over 100 years old. And mostly kind of construction worker, thermoses, a little bit of camping equipment, but kind of, that sort of rugged, gonna last you a lifetime kind of stuff. You buy it once, you're always gonna have it. And I think his name is Terrence Riley, who worked for Crocs, and he took Crocs back onto the market, like, as the kids would say, fire. Stanley bought him. He takes Stanley, he gets the right TikTok influencers, and it explodes. It goes from a $75 million company in 2019 to roughly $1 billion right now. And I'm watching our kids walk around with it. I'm watching my daughter walk. Those are all owned by the Downs family. Really, Aurora, she bought it with her own money. And what I wanted to talk with you about is talking with your kids about what I would say is a BS meter. And I don't mean boarding school meter. I mean BS meter. TikTok is so powerful. I was in Dick's Sporting Goods with my children just trying to pick up some spring gear, and I happened to randomly sit down next to the Stanley section, and I watched 3 different girls between the ages of 9 and 12 run up, hug them, and say, "Dad, I have to have this one. Isn't it cute?" And I'm almost the exact same language, exact same interest. And so I just urge you, it doesn't mean that I'm standing here as sort of airing my hypocrisy, right? I still purchased the thing. My daughter finds value in the thing, but why does she find value? And we talk about that. Like, this isn't an original idea. This is just, you want to be one of the crowd. And it's both the power of marketing in TikTok, and I would say it's really important. Kids love when you talk to them about thinking critically. They love it. I mean, they're rebels without a cause, right? I talked with your parents at Grandparents' Day about James Dean. Like, they will resist. You know, the media loves to say the word indoctrination about this thing or that thing. That is so nonsense with teenagers. I mean, that's the last thing they want. They want to refute everything you have to say. And so I think educating them on why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? 2 ads that I love that I'll add on to that. There's an ad about Orlando, Florida, that is beautiful. All of these shots, all of these things that you can do. And at the end of it, it says, "It's unbelievably real." That is the land of artifice. It is nothing about Orlando's real. The only thing that's real is swamps and mosquitoes. The rest of it is amusement park, fake turf, water features that aren't real. So, but the world accepts it. The other one I love is AT&T, and it's sort of related. But I don't know if you've seen, AT&T has made a big push to have Wi-Fi in cars. And it has really happy families with the headphones on and the iPads out, and it says, "Stay connected." It's everywhere. I mean, just look for it. You're going to see it, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, that's it." And I would just say, like, in my mind, it's like talking to kids, because people are savvier and smarter, and the technology is better, and they have the data. Just talking with them about, well, what is that, and why do they say that, and are they really connected? Because, right, the obvious answer there, when you look in the car, you're now robbing people of, sometimes parents will tell you, the most precious time that they ever have is just driving their kid to somewhere. Because they're locked in one space, and they got to talk about the music, or they got to talk about the day. It's just special time. So that's why I wanted to bring the Stanleys. Next one.
Robert Pettersky, our daughter, is Taya Pettersky, 5th former and proud Iron Chef winner.
Yeah.
Go with the Cornell.
So, university, I just have a lot of familiarity with, a lot of family that's gone there. My parents live in Ithaca. I have a brother. I have 4 brothers. One lives in Ithaca. He went there as well, and I think he still has the all-time games played record. This is a Cornell hockey hat. So I wanted to share with you some stats that Shannon Vollmer shared with me, that I share with our alumni body, that blew their mind last June. And so this is a way of talking about college, the craze, the pressure, and the mind shift that I think adults need to have as we look at data. So acceptance rates in 1973, 1998, 2023. And I'll just give you a few schools. So I'm going to go from 1973 to 1998 to 2003. Yale was 33% back in the early 70s. 20% when I graduated, 1998. 4% today. Penn, UPenn, 54%. You got in. 37% 1998, 5% last year. U Chicago, 82%. You fog a mirror, you're in. You got a pulse, you're in. 71% in 1998. Think about late 90s. So I'm kind of now peers with a lot of you, right? So that's where we are. 4% this year. I mean, almost impossible to get in. And then the schools that really, knock your socks off, and these are high. USC, 89%, 70%, now 10%. They had 81,000 applications this year. Northeastern. And everyone, so the perception, sorry if there's someone in, but the perception from our generation, anyone can go to Northeastern, throw it on there, right? Safety, target, reach, you're going. 92%. So the perception, and then it moved to 76%. The perception's kind of accurate with the numbers, and then 6% last year. So it's hard for people who've lived a life, who've experienced this themselves, to distance themselves from that experience and then to look at it with this reality. Now, that said, as Shannon announced to the entire student body, I forget what the date was, maybe April 15th, every single sixth former who applied to college has a home. Every single one. And many of them are really, really happy with where they're going. And there are some disappointments. And there's the reality of the numbers that we're all facing now. And so the more we can kind of look for right fit and realize that there are other great schools. Doesn't mean you can't apply to these schools, doesn't mean you can't get into these schools, you can. But the more that you can sort of broaden, understand that it's all evolved in a way where your child will land in a school that's right for him or her. Where Frank Bruni says, what is the name of the book, Shannon? It's Where You Go Is Not Who You Are. So it's really about the journey of the place. So I wanted to share that. The hockey part of it, I had this really interesting moment where I went back with my brother. His team in 2003 played in the Frozen Four, so they were good. They were top of the land. And they had a 20-year anniversary last year, and I'm with all of his teammates. Not one of them, and a handful of them played. My brother played in professional hockey for 6 years. Not one of them was making a living playing hockey. So that's for the student-athlete parents out there. It's really important to understand. Like, not one of them. They were doing big-time things. Partners in law firms, surgeons, it could go on and on and on. Private equity, hedge fund, whoa, you got lucky at the right time. Like, amazing stuff. But not one of them. And they are top of the land, the fittest athletes in that particular game. Which I just have to say a little thing while I have the time with you. I love some of the things that are happening with college athletes. Like Caitlin Clark should be a gazillionaire right now, and University of Iowa will receive 20,000, 25,000 more applications next year, because what they'll do, the kids will look up, oh, Caitlin Clark, Iowa, oh my gosh, they have an amazing writing program, and that kid has nothing to do with basketball, but now understands that Iowa's amazing. And anyone who knows writing knows that that's the top of the land. Okay, so that part of college athletics is great. I think the transfer portal is, a lot of people think it's a great idea. I think it's terrible. I think it takes away the meaning that you're going to deprive children of the meaning of working towards something together. They can leave whenever they want. They can go on to another program whenever they want. And now, I think, gone are the days of the freshman and sophomore group of kids who get their teeth kicked in, and then they win something senior year, and they have a deep sense of pride and meaning for what they've accomplished. I think it's a wonky time for student athletes. Next symbol. I'm over, but Can I do a couple quick ones? I'll just do these. I'll do the quick version. Although I can't do this one too quickly. I'm a big believer that the greatest thing that we can teach at this level is the ability to read, write, present clearly and effectively. That's it. That is it. That is a skill that transfers into everything that we do. And my wife, Erin, and I talk about this a lot. It's more important than just college essays. It's more important than the presentation, for your team at whatever company you work in. if you can express to someone how much you love them in your own unique way, that is a skill that enriches your life. If you can, I've been to way too many funerals in the last 12 months. I think it's been 16. If you can give a eulogy that really pays tribute to someone's life with the group of people that's never going to be there together again, that's a skill that I don't know how you put a price tag on it. And so I wanted to bring this out. You know, people sometimes ask me, you know, my own sort of educational philosophy. Well, there it is. I think that's premium. Ability to be precise, to be clear in how we think, how we write, and how we express ourselves. So the Blaine essays, this is just amazing. This is what our kids work on. You know, some of you have children working on the Blaines right now. Last year's finalists, transitioning the auto industry towards EV adoption, obscenity and its reflection on male-female gender relationships over the last 2,000 years, creating a legal path for climate migrants to enter the U.S., racial health disparities in the United States, improving access to resources is not the entire solution. This year, some of the things that I've heard from Lindsay, economics of NIL deals, implementing an entrepreneur visa in the United States system, immigration reform that works even with current political polarization, prison ministries and recidivism, homosexual repression in the early 20th century and how the world fought back against it. I mean, amazing. This is what our kids are working on. So they're doing all of that.